Hello and welcome everyone to our next talk. I would like to introduce our speaker. It's Davey Sapinski, and he is the founder of Interstellar Education, of the Interstellar Education Foundation, and he will present this foundation to us today and talk about this. Davey, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So, Interstellar Education Foundation is something that I came up with, due to the fact that we are looking at inhabiting other planets, other galaxies, and such. There's a lot of push for that. My fear is that education is going to get lost in the mix once we begin inhabiting other planets. Whether that be food sustainability, oxygen sustainability, transportation, whatever it may be. My plan is to write curriculum and to come up with curriculum delivery platforms for future inhabitants of Mars. And once we get to Mars, we're going to need to be educating the next generation of people that begin to inhabit Mars. Coming up with educational opportunities, educational platforms, and the such is something that I've been very passionate about for quite some time. My background is in teaching. I'm a high school technology education teacher. So educating young folks and new people into the field that we're into is something I'm very passionate about. This is my first time speaking about the Interstellar Education Foundation. This is just a startup. I'm just beginning this venture. Still remaining with my current position as a high school teacher. This is just something to do on the side, essentially. Part of what I really need to get across to people is what type of education are we going to need once we do begin inhabiting Mars? At first, we're not going to need the standard education because most people are going to be already, most of the first inhabitants are going to be well versed with math and science and such. We're just going to need to be educating them on how to sustain life on Mars, how to build transportation, how to build housing, that sort of stuff. As we progress in years down the road, when you never know, someday somebody might actually be born on Mars, then of course we're going to have to educate them on our standard education systems, math, sciences, reading, writing, those sorts of things. How are we going to deliver that content once we're on Mars? It's going to be a traditional classroom setting. Is it going to be all virtual? Are the educators that are going to educate the new people on Mars, are they going to be on Mars as well, or are they going to be educating them distantly from Earth? So a lot of unknowns, just something that I want to be on the forefront of so that education is not forgotten about once we begin inhabiting Mars and or other planets. So at this point, basically what I'm looking at is what type of interest do I have in this? Are there people that are interested and think that this is a viable venue to follow? Look to get funding to start developing the curriculum, start developing the curriculum delivery platforms, that sort of thing. So does anybody have any questions to this point and or comments? Feel free to either speak or type in the chat section.
Not yet. Maybe you finish your talk first and then we take the questions.
Okay, will do.
Because the time is limited.
Okay, thank you. One of the first things that we need to do is to understand what type of curriculum we need to develop. And again, as I spoke just a minute ago, Our first inhabitants on Mars are going to be people that are already well educated, well versed. It's going to be a matter of educating them on how to sustain life, how to sustain oxygen, how to sustain and build and sustain transportation, housing, food growth. We're looking at, proton particles, stuff like that. So a lot of science, a lot of chemistry, a lot of physics, along with just normal living types of things. That's where I'd like to begin my curriculum development. As time passes, we will be looking at ways to educate young folks that come on Mars that maybe are still in high school age, stuff like that. So we're looking at advancing their current education. Once we get that curriculum pinned down and developed, after that, we're going to be looking at how are we going to deliver the curriculum. Is that going to be in person? Is it going to be distant learning via a platform such as Zoom? I know the time that it takes data to get from Earth to Mars right now is substantial. So, maybe at that point, it would be like more of a pre-recorded type of an education that they would watch once they are on Mars, be downloaded, and then they could watch it once they get there and participate that way, versus live synchronous learning. It's going to be more of an asynchronous type of a learning. Asynchronous versus synchronous, simply, meeting the student where they are at, allow them to take the educational opportunities on their own time, complete the work and the reviews and quizzes, tests, that sort of thing, on their own time. It's not such a time tethered type of an education. And that's why in my mind, asynchronous learning would be the way to go to begin with. Some of the things that we'd be looking at teaching them are our basic maths, our basic sciences, our basic writing, reading, that sort of stuff. For the folks that are already advanced through most of that, some of the original inhabitants that are going to be on Mars, we'd just be looking at sustainability. What types of things do we need to sustain? What types of knowledge do folks need? What types of knowledge do they need to retain in order to sustain long-term life on Mars and or other planets? Looking at in some of my research in digging through this over these past few months, there's really nobody out there that is looking to educate while on Mars. There's a lot of education taking place on how to get to Mars. There's a lot of education taking place on things that we may be looking at doing once we're on Mars, but nobody's looking into sustaining education once we do inhabit other planets. And that's my goal, is just to make sure that education does not get lost. A lot of people call space, obviously space is known as the final frontier, but we don't want that final frontier to be the end to all education. Education is very important, as I'm sure all of you realize and understand. So sustaining that is my goal. Sustaining that and trying to figure out what types of things we do need to educate folks on once we become inhabitants of other planets or residents of other planets. And that's really about it. That's just kind of what I'm looking at. I'd like to see what types of interests are out there. The few folks that are on this screen, just a thumbs up on the chat section, maybe, if there's any interest in this, if you think that maybe this is something I should pursue further. In my mind, I definitely want to pursue it further.
Okay.
I really think it's important. It's critical.
Thank you so much. I would suggest that you simply unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Sapinski. Thank you very much for that talk. So asynchronous learning, as you suggested, this is going to be the the way that education will be delivered only in the beginning of Mars settlement, right? How do you imagine maybe in 50 years, maybe in 100 years, when the settlement is bigger, do you think Mars programs will be like the programs that we have on universities on Earth today? Or do you think something completely different will come up?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, you're right. As far as right now, it would be that asynchronous type of delivery. As we progress, some of my visions are that we would maybe go to a traditional classroom type of a setting on Mars, built on Mars as a hub, if you will, or as some sort of an educational facility. So we're looking at building a school potentially on Mars, that sort of thing. But again, as technology continues to progress, I still think there's a lot of potential and a lot of opportunity for distant learning type of content delivery. Maybe being able to deliver content live, but from Earth or from the other side of the planet of Mars. If we're in zero crater with the school, but somebody lives on the opposite end of Mars, could they potentially still deliver content online, if you will? So many opportunities there. But yeah, my eventual goal would be definitely a brick and mortar type of a school on Mars, so it is in-person content delivery. Again, that's only going to happen if we can sustain livability, life on Mars.
Right. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
It's interesting. Thank you for your lecture first. And yeah, it's interesting because we had a woman talking about children on Mars, and recently I had to talk about sociology on Mars, the social behavior between, because you are teaching STEM, but not the social part. And yeah, these are all interesting questions in case that we settle on Mars, or when we settle on Mars and the first child or children are born there, and it will first be a small community, and yeah, and it will be also a limited knowledge what will handed over, because it's only the knowledge of the parents which are there. And yeah, you can see how it works. If you see certain communities where they give only their knowledge from generation to generation, but I think there must be more. I agree with you. And on the other hand, you have another kind of knowledge, because children born on Mars will not know the Earth. So for them, that is something like Alice in Wonderland or whatever, like a fairy tale. Nature, to go to a forest or things like this. Yeah. So yeah.
No, very much so. Thank you for bringing up the social learning as well. Absolutely. How to interact with others. Along with social comes economics, right? Economy. How do we handle economy on Mars? What is that going to look like? And then of course, once it gets established, how to educate the new arrivals on that economic system.
And law
is a very big one, right? Law, government.
Government, it is all interesting topics.
Yeah. So and in my abstract, when I sent in my proposal for speaking, I did put in there that it's going to require educators from all around the globe, right? We're going to have a multitude of different ethnic people on Mars, that sort of stuff. So we're definitely going to need educators from around the globe. It's not just going to be a one and done type of a deal.
Yes, I know. It's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, are there any more questions? I guess not. So I would like to thank you for representing your startup and the Interstellar Education Foundation. I hope it will be successful and maybe you will teach the first pupil on Mars. I don't know. Thank you so much for being here and for your lecture, and thank you to the audience for joining us. And I hope I see you in one of the next sessions.
Thank you. Thank you. And then in the next lecture I'll have slides and stuff, because now that I know that there's some interest, I'll start putting some things together, some ideas, some visions, and we can share those out. So collaborate.
Yeah, it would be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.